Under the banner of hashtag Code Red, disrupted a webinar in which Finance Minister Tito Mboweni was set to speak, saying that austerity kills. They were calling for a feminist economy, a universal basic income grant, an end to austerity, and an end to corporate and government looting. So the feminists under hashtag Code Red are not granting interviews for now. We have requested to speak to them. They've said to us they'll release a statement. But let's talk about austerity. I'm joined by Duma Gqubule from the Centre of Economic Development and Transformation. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. So Duma, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has repeatedly said that Treasury has not adopted austerity measures, but rather there's a balancing act, and he's spoken about the kind of social spend that government is doing. You saying that he's resorting to austerity denialism. What is austerity and why do you believe that that's happening?
Okay, so basically, thank you for the invite, Nzinga. And I support the feminist economists in their, And what I want to say is that I've read every single page of the budget, 250 pages, the budget review. I've also read most of the estimates of national expenditure, 987 pages. Every single page of that budget talks about austerity. The government is planning to withdraw 265 billion rands from the economy over the next 3 years. That will cause harm to the economy and impede the recovery. Some of the cuts make no sense whatsoever. We've got 50 billion rand cuts from health in the middle of a pandemic. Then we've got 39 billion rands cuts from police budget and the retrenchment of 18,000 soldiers in the middle of a public safety crisis that we have in the country at the moment. And then we've got a cut of 36 billion rands from social grant spending at a time when our people desperately need more support. We've got cuts of 25 billion rands from basic education and also 24.6 billion rands from tertiary education. And we've also got cuts of 15 billion rands from the South African National Defence Force. So every single page, every single line in the budget is about cutting expenditure. So that is what I mean when I say that the Finance Minister, the National Treasury, is engaged in austerity denialism. Every country in the world, most major economies in the world, implemented stimulus packages of about $16 trillion, 17% of world GDP. And the International Monetary Fund has advised countries repeatedly not to withdraw the stimulus from the economy too soon before the recovery takes hold. What we have done in South Africa, we've withdrawn the stimulus, the limited stimulus that we had last year, and we are now, it's going to impede recovery, increase unemployment, poverty and inequality, and widespread hunger.
Duma, you have touched on the ramifications of austerity. Let's just talk about that more and also speak about the fact that the Finance Minister says about 56% of around 2 trillion rand expenditure for the 2021 year is going to social spending.
Well, I did an analysis of that in a report for SPY, a social justice and think tank, and we looked at each of those 4 items of social spending. And as I said to you just now, we calculated that the austerity measures in the social spending were 136 billion rands. That is health, education, basic and health, social grants, basic education and tertiary education. So we looked at those 4 items and we came to austerity measures of 136. Now, the Treasury itself says that the cuts in education will have an impact on performance at schools. You know, it's like red ink throughout the budget. So for them to cherry pick a number that doesn't make sense, because every single budget must have social spending, I don't understand why they have to do that yet.
All right. Can South Africa spend its way out of this crisis? How and where will we find the money?
Well, I recently that shows 11 options as to how to spend our way out of this crisis. Some of them involve, let me just give the one that's obvious. In the budget recently, the budget review shows that the government had 292 billion rand cash. There was collections of, because of the commodity boom that we saw last year, government had collected, I think, more than 100 billion rand than they had expected at the medium-term budget policy statement in October. So that alone is enough to, it can be spent back into the economy. There's no need to use that money to pay back debt, because austerity is a self-defeating policy, because when you measure a debt ratio, it's debt as a percentage of GDP. Now, if you're reducing the bottom part of that equation, it will result in a higher debt ratio as a country. So I've been looking at Brazil, which had an amazing, unconditional cash transfers with 4.5% of GDP. And Brazil's economy has recovered to pre-COVID levels. And at the same time, their debt ratio has declined, despite spending more money into the economy.
Mm. Duma, we know before budget, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni and Treasury call for solutions and ask South Africans to give their input into what they would like to see in the budget. Yesterday, I think those code red feminist economists were trying to, transmit a message in the quickest and most direct way as possible. Perhaps my question is, they've come up with solutions and things that they want. You're also giving suggestions of what can be done to kind of get South Africa out of this constant economic crisis that we seem to be facing. Do we have a government that listens? How do you take this from a discussion on television to actually being implemented or actually being listened to by the finance minister?
I think the feminists have, they've gone to the government many times. They've presented in parliament, and they've been in so many forums, and they just lost hope that the Treasury will ever listen. So I'm just saying that what we're looking forward to this in the next few days, perhaps on Sunday with the president, is that he should announce economic measures to counter the lockdown and the state of the economy. So people are expecting him to announce an increase, a reintroduction of the social relief of distress grant until the end of the fiscal year, and perhaps the introduction of a basic income grant. So there's also talk of a business rescue fund that has been talked about at NEDLAC, and the government might decide to recapitalize SASRIA. So now those things might require an emergency budget. It might require an end to the austerity. If the government introduces big, then it means that it's the end of the austerity policies, and it has huge implications for the economy. Yeah.
Duma Gqubule from the Centre of Economic Development and Transformation, thanks so much for your time and insight on SABC News this afternoon. Now, there are over